Battle of Tours. How Charles Martel stopped an empire. What happens when a rebel Berber marries a Frankish duke's daughter? Why did a Muslim commander with a heart of gold march into Aquitaine with fire and fury? And how did a hammer-wielding warlord named Charles Martel stop an empire in its tracks, without a crown, without cavalry, and without mercy? This isn't just a battle. It's a collision of civilizations, a clash of faiths, and a showdown that would echo for centuries. So buckle up, because this story has it all. Forbidden marriages, surprise flanking attacks, burning abbeys, and a final stand that changed the course of history. It all started when the Islamic world was on a roll. Not a gentle stroll, mind you, a full-throttle, camel-charging, crescent banner-waving expansion that had taken the faith from the sands of Khorasan in the east to the shores of Tripoli in the west. The Umayyad Caliphate was the superpower of its age, and it had no intention of stopping for tea. In 711, a coalition of Arab and Berber adventurers, think of them as the Avengers but with turbans and scimitars, crossed the Strait of Gibraltar and steamrolled the Visigothic kingdom of Hispania. Poor King Roderick, who had the misfortune of being both unpopular and unprepared, was crushed at the Battle of Guadalete. His crown was lost, his army scattered, and his kingdom became a footnote. Enter Aquila, a man who inherited the throne like one inherits a haunted mansion. Born into Visigothic nobility, Aquila was more administrator than warrior, more parchment than sword. He was driven into Septimania, the last Gothic stronghold, where he tried to hold the line. Spoiler, he didn't. By 719, Septimania had fallen, and the Umayyads were knocking on the Frankish front door. Let's talk about Charles Martel, the man who would become the hammer of Christendom. Born around 686, the illegitimate son of Pepin of Herstal, Charles was the kind of guy who made enemies nervous just by sharpening his sword. After Pepin's death, the Frankish realm descended into chaos, and Charles clawed his way to power through civil war, betrayal, and sheer grit. By 719, Charles had brokered a deal with Odo. He'd recognize Aquitaine's autonomy in exchange for custody of King Chilperic II, a royal puppet Charles used to legitimize his rule. Later, he'd swap Chilperic for Thierry IV, another do-nothing king who made Charles look good simply by existing. This made Odo of Aquitaine very nervous. Imagine being the guy who lives next to a dragon's cave and hears it snoring louder each night. Odo, a semi-independent duke with delusions of grandeur, watched as al-Sam, the Muslim governor of Al-Andalus, consolidated power and laid siege to Carcassonne, a Visigothic holdout. In 721, al-Sam went for the jugular, Toulouse. But Odo, in a moment of sheer desperation and brilliance, launched a night attack that shattered the siege and sent al-Sam to meet his maker. It was a stunning victory, but not a unified Christian triumph. Odo had begged Charles Martel, the de facto ruler of the Franks, for help. Charles said no, politely but firmly, like a bouncer at a royal nightclub. Meanwhile in Al-Andalus, things weren't exactly harmonious. Arab and Berber tensions simmered like a pot left unattended. Into this mess stepped al-Rahman al-Ghafiqi, a man of noble Arab lineage, famed for his generosity, piety, and courage. He was friends with a son of Umar, the second caliph after Muhammad, which gave him serious street cred. After al-Sam's death, al-Rahman took command of the remnants. Though briefly replaced for being too nice to defeated enemies, yes, really, he returned to power and ruled Septimania from Narbonne, just a stone's throw from Toulouse. Now pause for a sec, step into the extraordinary, subscribe to Eccentric Digital Pixel. Welcome to the wild frontier of creativity, where pixels pulse with imagination and every frame tells a story you've never seen before. We don't follow trends, we bend reality. Get exclusive access to jaw-dropping digital creations. Be the first to witness new drops by turning on notifications. Don't just scroll, experience the pixel revolution. Smash that subscribe button and ring the bell to never miss a masterpiece. Because normal is boring, and you were born to see the world differently. In the sun-scorched lands of North Africa, tensions were bubbling like a cauldron left too long on the fire. The Arab elite, proud and powerful, ruled Al-Andalus with the confidence of conquerors. But beneath them, the Berbers, those hardy mountain folk who had helped win Hispania, were growing restless. They'd fought, bled, and died for the Umayyads, only to be treated like second-class citizens. Not exactly a recipe for loyalty. Enter Munusa, the regional governor of Sardinia. A Berber with a spine of steel and a flair for rebellion, Munusa had had enough. Upon hearing of the oppression of his fellow Berbers back home, he did what any self-respecting rebel would do. He threw off Umayyad control, declared independence, and started shopping for allies. And who better than Odo of Aquitaine, the Frankish duke who was also having a rough time with his neighbors. The two men, both embattled and ambitious, sealed their alliance not with a treaty, but with a wedding. Munusa married Odo's illegitimate but beautiful daughter, because nothing says diplomatic pact like a politically convenient romance. Now, if you're thinking this alliance would go unnoticed, think again. Abd al-Rahman al-Ghafiqi, the Umayyad governor of Al-Andalus, was not a man to be trifled with. Noble, pious, and generous, yes, but also fiercely loyal to the Caliphate. Munusa's pact with Odo was a dagger pointed at his southern flank, and al-Rahman had unfinished business with Odo anyway. From the moment of his second accession as governor, al-Rahman began planning his push into Aquitaine. Between 730 and 732, he toured his province like a rock star on campaign, inspecting cities, collecting taxes, and quietly assembling an army at Pamplona. Estimates vary, but his force may have numbered 15,000 to 20,000 men, a formidable host of Arab cavalry, Berber infantry, and seasoned veterans. Meanwhile, up north, Charles Martel, the hammer of the Franks, wasn't losing sleep over al-Rahman. No, his real concern was a meeting between Odo and the ex-mayor of Neustria, which smelled suspiciously like a plot to dethrone him. And just to keep things spicy, Muslim raiders had burned down Autun, a rich city in Burgundy, right under Charles's nose. Charles responded with his usual subtlety. He attacked northeastern Aquitaine twice, crossing the Loire and looting Bourges. Odo, ever the comeback kid, swiftly retook it. But the message was clear. Charles was watching. In the south, al-Rahman made his move. During the summer or early autumn of 731, he crushed Munusa's rebellion. His army swept through the province, took Munusa's stronghold, and finally cornered the rebel governor in the mountains. Facing capture, Munusa threw himself off a cliff, a dramatic exit befitting a man who'd gambled everything and lost. By May or June of 732, al-Rahman crossed off into Aquitaine, not through the usual eastern route, but via the west, straight into Odo's heartland. It was a clever move, avoiding Toulouse, where al-Sam had died in 721, and catching Odo off guard. Al-Rahman's main body headed north toward Bordeaux, while smaller raiding parties devastated the lands between the Pyrenees and the Garonne, meeting little resistance. Odo, scrambling, assembled a force of Gascons and Basque militia and positioned them along the river. But this wasn't Toulouse. Odo was defeated, and Bordeaux fell. The Muslim host burned churches, slaughtered inhabitants, and plundered the city, adding to their already considerable hoard. Al-Rahman wasn't done. He pursued Odo, wiping out most of his army. With nowhere else to turn, Odo fled north to Reims, seeking help from the one man he'd once spurned, Charles Martel. Charles, ever pragmatic, agreed. He mustered his army from all three realms, crossed the Loire via Ambrose, and to his relief found Tours untouched. But the clock was ticking. Al-Rahman's army, now split into raiding bands, ravaged the region for 3 months, then regrouped at Saintes and marched toward Poitiers. Though walled, Poitiers had unfortified suburbs, which the Umayyads sacked. They looted the abbey church of Saint-Hilaire, then bypassed the city entirely, heading for the abbey of Saint-Martin outside Tours, a treasure trove of relics and riches. But they were in for a surprise. Charles Martel's army had arrived. The Muslim host, heavily laden with loot, pulled back to a defensive position between the rivers, establishing camp around October 18th. Charles' army encamped on the opposite bank of the Vienne, and for days the two forces stared each other down. Sporadic skirmishes broke out. The Franks, mostly infantry, included grizzled veterans and fresh militia, with a small cavalry arm led by Odo. The Umayyads, by contrast, were largely mounted, mobile, and well-equipped. Their camp, likely on high wooded ground, seemed secure, but as history would show, it was not invulnerable, and so the stage was set. Two civilizations, two faiths, two armies, poised for a clash that would echo through the centuries. The Umayyad army, like a well-oiled machine of conquest, was arrayed in its traditional five-fold formation: a center, two wings, a vanguard, and a rearguard. This wasn't some ragtag band of raiders. This was a professional force, forged in the fires of campaigns from the Pyrenees to Persia. And their camp? Absolutely not left to chance. The rearguard, likely stationed close to or within the camp itself, stood ready to repel any surprise attack. As the sun rose on October 25th, the Umayyads once again formed ranks. Their banners fluttered in the wind, their cavalry pawed the earth, and their swords gleamed with anticipation. Al-Rahman al-Ghafiqi, the commander whose name echoed with prestige and piety, gave the order. The Umayyads surged forward. Across the field, Charles Martel, the hammer of the Franks, stood resolute. He knew the stakes. This wasn't just a battle, it was survival. His army, mostly infantry, formed a shield wall so tight it could have stopped a hurricane. Charles understood that his best chance was to endure. No flashy maneuvers, no reckless charges, just grit, discipline, and the iron will of men who knew they were the last line of defense. The Umayyad charges came like waves, crashing, smashing, probing for weakness. Al-Rahman ordered targeted assaults, testing the Frankish line for cracks. And while some parts of the line buckled, none broke. The Franks held firm, their shields bloodied but unyielding. But the Umayyads, they were beginning to fray. Then came the twist. Odo of Aquitaine, the aging duke with a score to settle, led a small cavalry contingent in a wide flanking maneuver. He didn't charge the main battle. He circled behind, aiming straight for the Umayyad camp. And he got in. Odo's men slaughtered non-combatants, disrupted supply lines, and sent chaos rippling through the rear. But the camp wasn't undefended. The Umayyad rearguard fought back fiercely, preventing a total rout. Still, the damage was done. Not just in blood, but in morale. Word spread through the Umayyad ranks like wildfire. The camp is under attack. Al-Rahman, realizing the threat, ordered a general withdrawal to secure the rear. That moment, that hesitation, was all Charles needed. He launched a full-scale counterattack, smashing into the retreating Umayyads and driving them back to their camp. The battle raged anew, and in the chaos, Al-Rahman himself fell. It was the second breakthrough of the day. But even with their commander dead, the Umayyads didn't collapse. They pushed back, forcing Charles to withdraw to his own camp as night fell. The field was littered with the dead, the wounded, and the echoes of clashing steel. At dawn, Charles once again arrayed his warriors for battle. Shields were lifted, swords were drawn, but the field was silent. The Umayyad army had withdrawn during the night, in good order no less. They left behind their camp, their prisoners, and a hefty stash of loot. The treasure was so vast it slowed any pursuit, and Charles, lacking cavalry, chose not to chase. Instead, he marched north via Orléans, leaving Odo to mop up the remnants. The Battle of Tours didn't end in annihilation. It ended in a strategic checkmate. Charles had halted the advance of the Umayyad Caliphate, protected the Abbey of St. Martin, and scored a victory that would echo through history. But the Muslim presence in Francia wasn't gone. The Umayyads held on in Septimania, and it would take Charles's son, Pepin, to finally drive them out of Narbonne years later. And in the south, the Reconquista, the long, grinding struggle to reclaim Iberia, would rage for centuries. Next up, the First Crusade. The clash of civilizations is far from over. From Tours to Jerusalem, the story continues. So if you've enjoyed this journey through blood, banners, and battlefield brilliance, don't forget to follow us, subscribe, click the notification bell so you never miss another tale of intrigue, empire, and epic warfare. History's hammer has struck. Let's see where it lands next.